Order, order. Hello and welcome to Reporters Without Orders, a podcast where we talk about what made news, what didn't, and some things that absolutely shouldn't have. Today, I have with me, actually, I don't have with me, but on a Zoom call, I have Tanishka and Laasya, our in house reporters. Thank you so much for joining me today. And especially Tanishka, it's your day off, but you've agreed to come on the podcast with us. So thank you for taking the time.
Personally.
And Lasya, you're right now in Chennai.
No, I'm actually in Chittoor. I've come to my parents' place for a day. So
Right.
I'm working from here.
Okay. So, Tanishka, I'll actually start with you. Uh, so, it's been close to 18 months since Umar Khalid was first arrested. He was named as one of the key conspirators in the violence. And I think his name also comes under the FIR 59, which has been one of the most controversial FIRs since the anti CA protest arrests began. Um, and I think he was granted bail, if I'm right, in April 2021, but again denied bail in the under FIR 59, right?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
And this is the FIR under which he's being charged for UAPA. So, Tanishka, last week you did a report for us. It was titled Mastermind of Conspiracy Why Umar Khalid's Bail Plea Was Dismissed After 8 months of Hearings. I want to just start with some context. Can you tell me a little bit, like, how long have you been reporting on this case? When did Umar Khalid apply for bail and on what grounds?
Right. So, like you said, he was granted bail in another case related to Delhi riots in April 2021. He filed for bail for this case in July 2021. I started reporting on it in September. So the hearings have stretched really long in physical mode, in virtual mode, and what's been unusual is that this is just a bail case. It's still not gone into trial. So for a bail case to stretch so long, it has. Been a little, people have been speaking about how this is not an ordinary case, that maybe there are some other reasons involved. Of course, FIR 59, as we've seen, is a really, really long charge sheet. So, but for the judge to go through the charges and not just the whether or not he should be granted bail was a little unusual. But the decision and the order was not really surprising for most of us who have been following it, and we can get into that
Yeah.
more later.
Yeah. So I want to understand how many times have you, like, you've been to court a couple of times, right? And generally, I want to get a sense of what is, do you see a change in, like, how there's, so I'm assuming there's a lot of reporters who come to court when there's Umar Khalid's bail hearing, family and friends who arrive there. But with time, has that reduced? Like, is there a change in how people also have interest in the case?
So I started going to court, and again, I've not gone for every hearing from October onwards. For Umar Khalid's hearings, there are more reporters compared to the other accused in the same case, but it's not as many as you'd think. I was also initially surprised because in the online hearings, there are a lot more because it's convenient and easy. People can log into several hearings at the same time, but there would be about 2 to 3 people consistently in all hearings. Besides that, when once you start following the hearings, you know what's going to happen on a particular day. So, for example, last week, there were 2 days where the order was supposed to be passed. So, there were around 10 reporters on each day. But otherwise, it's not more than like two, three, four, max five. And surprisingly, his family and friends have not really been. Attending the hearings as such because like I said, this is not really trial, this is just for bail, so that's another thing.
Hmm. And why did it take 8 months to decide on a bail order? I mean, I'm also curious because, say, under the FIR 59, there have been about 15 accused, of which I think 5 or 6 are now out on bail. Uh, has this been an unusually long hearing for a bail application, or has it been the same process for a lot of others who've got bail in this particular FIR case?
I think it's been a long process for most people. For this particular case, in his order, the judge also said that he called this a very hotly contested bail application. And he said that it took so long because the defense and the prosecution had really gone deep into the charge sheet and the annexures. And that is true. It was a very, all the hearings have been rather colorful. There have been a lot of examples, and the case has been compared to several things, to several shows, and even Umar Khalid has been called the veteran of sedition, and it's been very entertaining in a way for people, I think, to read about it, because if you hear a hearing, I mean, if you're attending a hearing and it's about 35 minutes long, but there's one line that really stands out. For example, Khalid's lawyer once said that the charge sheet is like the script of Family Man. So that is what people pick as headlines. I mean, I think we are also guilty in that aspect. So it gets a lot more attention. And the hearings, I mean, if I think anyone who's attended court hearings understands that it's not really you get a date and then the argument happens on that date. It has been deferred so many times, not just the order. There are so many days that we've gone to court and the hearing has just not taken place, because of a lot of other logistics. So that's something that really surprised me when I started attending this, that how much time just goes into deciding when a case can be heard, and for all this time, for the fault of logistics or the number of cases there are, the accused is just lying in jail waiting for their case to be heard. So that's another something.
So there's a line in your report which actually speaks about these colorful statements that are being made by the prosecution, which the defense points out, the defense of Umar Khalid. And you say that there's been comparisons to the plot of Family Man and Harry Potter, the villain in Harry Potter. So how has this featured in Umar Khalid's bail hearing?
So during the arguments, the defense brings this up. He speaks about how the investigating officer has the fertile imagination of a script writer of Family Man, and how the charge sheet reads like, a screaming 9 p.m. debate. So I don't think these are arguments as such, but they are a part of the arguments. And like I said, this is what gets picked up and gets attention, even though it's not really what the judge is going to really take into consideration, I think, while making his decision. So he did say that all these, he didn't name them, but we can get a sense of what he's talking about. He said that this was unnecessary, but he also said that the charge sheet's mention of the adjectives that it uses, which I'm assuming are the adjectives it uses for Khalid, for example, calls him the veteran of sedition and the silent whisperer. He said that those things were also not required. So it is a very like I said, colorful charge sheet, and the hearings have been also rather colorful.
I just want to bring in Laasya for a second. So, Laasya in Delhi, this has been a very big conversation ever since the anti-CA protests, whether it's the hearing of Ishrat Chauhan, whether it's, Natasha or Devangana coming out on bail. It's discussed a lot in Delhi and among the Delhi journalist circle, at least for sure. What is it like in Tamil Nadu? Like, is there conversations about any of this that happens there? Or is this seen as like a Delhi issue?
It's completely seen as a Delhi issue. Like a lot of us are not even aware of the nitty-gritty of these things. We all know about the protests that happened against CAA. We knew that lives were claimed, but we don't know that, it's just, on the front page of the newspaper that the bail has been denied. Not even in the front page in some papers. So that's all the awareness is. And I also had to do a little bit of reading to understand the nitty-gritty of it, to be honest.
Mm. And Tanishka, just to come back to the hearing, the bail order, there's also mention of Umar Khalid's thesis. Right? How are they trying to understand? And there's been an attempt to understand who Umar Khalid is through his research thesis. So, what is the relevance of his research thesis here?
Right, so it was part of the defense's arguments for Umar's bail. They mentioned the thesis and his other research papers. I think it was about Adivasi rights or something related to that. So the judge said that this cannot be the basis of how we grant bail. Like you said, he said that it's not relevant while considering bail, and you can't figure out the bent of his mind, and just the charge sheet. The facts presented in the charge sheets have to be taken into consideration, not what he's written about. So what I'm getting an understanding of is that who he was as a person or the kind of things he wrote about, we can't take that into consideration while framing whether or not he should be granted bail.
So what was the defense trying to say? That like him doing research on, say, an Adivasi community in Jharkhand, what does that reflect about Umar Khalid?
I think they were trying to present the argument that this is what he has done, this is the good that he has done, and this is the right things that he has done. So just, I think, because in a way, characterization does play into, hearings and orders, even if they say that it's not supposed to. I remember Khalid was part of some WhatsApp groups related to Muslim students during the formation of when the protests were being organized. And there was this whole argument this one day about whether or not Khalid is an atheist, the prosecutor had said, I believe, that he's giving an impression of being an atheist, but he's part of these groups. So it really just goes into the nitty-gritties of a lot of things, which I don't know if would be relevant if the case wasn't as sensitive and did not have as many implications as this particular case does. So even if something is mentioned in passing, it is sort of dwell into. So that's another thing that the judge said, that everything was really sort of contested. I don't think there was anything that was not contested from either side. So it just kept on going back and forth.
So, viewers, if you've been watching this on YouTube and watching the video, this is where it's going to end. If you want to tune into the rest of the podcast, you're going to have to go to our swanky podcast player on newslaundry.com, or we're also there on Apple, Stitcher, and other podcast platforms. And if you want to refer to the amazing stories that both Laasya and Tanishka have done in the last week, please go to our website and you can find them there under reports, or even if you look for them by name, you'll find their reports.
The subscription model is something that keeps Newslaundry afloat, but we need hundreds of thousands of people to completely transform the news ecosystem. So you pay for news, so it serves you. So click on the link with this video, subscribe to Newslaundry and pay to keep news free, और गर्व से कहो मेरे खर्च पर आज़ाद है खबरें.